Welcome to the moment that changed everything, where we interview notable creative people to gain insights into how they got started and learn more about the moments that shaped them and their careers. On this episode, I sit down with Jana Peck.
It's not by chance that anything ends up in a commercial. It is researched to death, it is focus grouped till the end of the world, and it's got to please the client's mother. I mean, it's ridiculous what an idea has to go through to survive. So you better be adaptable or you are not in the right business.
Jana Peck does not mince words. But as a woman who got her start in a predominantly male-dominated industry, in many ways she had to. And frankly, we found her perspective on writing, creativity, and what it's like to bare your soul as an actor truly refreshing. Jana has worked at agencies such as TBWA Chiat Day and many others before moving into commercial direction and comedy. Hey, so Jana Peck, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You know, your name came up recently because we heard that your show, Madge Peck, was at Just for Laughs, and I hear it did really well.
It did. I was very pleased. I co-created with my writing partner, James Madge, a fellow actor and writer, a sketch comedy show based on our names, cleverly called Madge Peck, and it's comedy with a life under its belt. It's for grown-ups. It's for midlife. And what a, am I allowed to swear? What a shit show this is. Can I just say?
Absolutely.
Okay, I wasn't sure. It's very intelligent, sophisticated comedy with a message and satire and all that kind of stuff. And we were lucky enough to be accepted into the Just for Laughs pitch competition, which I didn't even know was a thing. As one of the 5 finalists across North America, you send in your work, and they have two different categories, one for short form, which we were because we're sketch, and then one for long form, so half-hour, 60-minute television shows. And you get to go to Montreal and stand up and pitch your show in front of a panel of 5 or 6 professional, for short form, it was different platforms looking for content. And didn't we go and win, Steve? We won the pitch competition, which was terrific. So I don't know what's going to happen with it.
What do you get?
You get a hearty congratulations, and you get, ironically, I'm not even making this up, one of you gets paid to come back next year. That's the gift. But it's more about
exposure.
It's the exposure, and it's the chance to pitch your show and have the people in the business be made aware of your show, and it's a super cool week. I didn't realize, I thought the Just for Laughs Festival was all just comedy shows, but it's this massive industry conference that's super organized in Montreal. I was really impressed with the level, and they set up all these meetings for you, and you got your own agenda on your online thing, and you can't have that meeting because you get this meeting booked already. And so we had lots of chances to meet people in the business and stuff. And I'd say the win is a very good calling card for us. Don't know if anything's going to happen. No one's raced to us with $1 million and said, we have to see this show, go make it.
Right.
We have a YouTube channel, Madge Peck. You can go check them out. We have a couple sketches up online that we shot.
So I know that there's certain things that need to be telegraphed in your pitch, and one of them I think is like story arc or something like that.
Yeah, well, sketch doesn't particularly have a story arc because each one of them is different.
Okay.
But yeah, for a pitch, what you want to achieve is that the people that you're talking to when you're done have a very strong sense of exactly what your show is. And how well do you know your show? Do you know the voice of your show? And who is your show for? And where does your show belong? And why do we need your show? So it's very much about which sounds simple, but it's really not. Like, how well do you know your show? And when people, other pitch teams got up and pitched and they said, okay, so what happens in season 2? You don't have an answer. That's going to be a problem. So it was, like a new business pitch in advertising, you better have your act together, and you better be able to know exactly what this business you're pitching is all about and why they need to come to you to do it. So certainly my ad life helped exponentially in my pitch ability and my ability to stand up and say, here's the top 10 things you need to know about us, A, B, C, D, and just go. It was very specific and very, very professional, Steve, for me. And it was just, you got to be funny, but you got to be buttoned. It's a business.
Yeah. Well,
a lot of funny people, They want the dollars. They got
Yeah.
to see that there's potential to make money.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit because when I met you, you're a fairly young writer at Chiat.
Oh, that was my first full-time
Right.
job. Yeah, Steve and I, is there a camera I should talk to or no, this one? Hi. Steve and I go way back. We're pals for like 25 years.
Yes,
and
that's right.
he was in the mailroom and I was the juniorest of copywriters at Chiat Day. It wasn't even TBWA Chiat Day then, it was just Chiat Day.
Well, that's the great thing about the guests that we have on this show is that for the young creative people out there listening, it's great for them to hear that hey, it's okay to start in the mailroom, hopefully.
Yeah.
And
Oh, you got to
writers,
pay your dues. There's this
yeah,
big sense now
absolutely.
if people don't want to pay their dues. And
Remember Chris Pastrick used to call it cleaning the barn.
cleaning the barn.
Right?
Oh, Pastrick. Oh my God.
Yeah. So speaking of beginnings, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're from? Because you're from out east.
I'm from out east. I was born and raised on Cape Breton Island. Then at 18, I came to Toronto to go to Ryerson for radio and television. I knew I wanted to do something in the field. I wasn't sure. And they had a copywriting class there. And I'd always had this thing for commercials. I'd always loved really funny commercials. And back then, I mean, it's different now because of the landscape of broadcast and stuff like that. But there was 3 TV channels, or the
Yeah.
American network. So commercials were a big damn deal. And a really great one stood out. And everybody talked about it. And everybody, the commercials were better than the TV shows half the time. Right. And they were a cultural thing, and everybody talked about it. And I thought, I didn't even know copywriter was a job. I think back then, too, in the early 90s, late 80s, it never even dawned on me that, commercials just got on TV somehow. Nobody thinks about how they're made or who did it or whatever. And then I had this advertising course and found out that it was this job called copywriter. And I'm like, ring-a-ding-ding.
Yeah.
And I felt like that's exactly what I was supposed to be doing. So I spent a long time trying to get into the business because it was brutally hard, and they didn't have, pardon me, they didn't have advertising courses like they do now, or copywriting courses, or that you go in for 2 years and you come out of it with a portfolio and they hook you up with people. Like that didn't exist back then.
Wow.
So you're kind of on your own. And it took a lot of... I picked the hardest career, Steve. I just realized, I picked the...
Well, we
I'm
talked
gonna,
earlier.
if I have to climb Mount Kilimanjaro to get to that job, I want that job. So yeah, it was a long haul to get in. And I just called a bunch of people, senior writers and at agencies, and kind of learned their names. I said, look, I know you're not going to hire me, but will you go through my book with me? Will you help me with my portfolio? And everybody was great. I'd never had anybody say no. And I did that later in my career when I was more established. I'd tear apart a junior's book.
Right.
Lose this, do this, you need this. And they'd be like, okay, thank nobody ever told me that before. And,
Right.
So I tried hard to pay that forward because that was helpful. It was the only way I got my book together good enough to be able to go to work for free
Right.
in advertising
Yeah.
for a long time and then get paid shitty money to do it for a long time.
Well, we had Chris Hirsch on, and he's from out east, and I don't, his story was not unlike other writers who watched sketch comedy, would
Yeah.
watch SCTV,
Yeah.
watch SNL,
Yeah.
realized that a lot of the writers were performing at the same
Yeah.
time, which is kind of a nice way to talk about how your career has gone. But
Mm-hmm.
before we get there, I mean, you're also talking. My first job as a writer was I was hired by Jane Pritchard
Oh my God.
at Y&R.
Yeah.
And throughout my career, it's it's a little bit different in that most of the time my creative directors were women.
Yeah, that's rare.
Yeah.
I was the only girl in the department.
So I was going
For several years.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you've picked a job and you want to go out there and meet people and do this for a living. And I'm imagining that at that point, a lot of the creative people that you were talking to were guys.
Every single one of them.
Well, and the
except
only-
maybe Marta Cutler is the only one I can think of.
I feel like you had an advantage because don't you have like 8 brothers or something?
I have 4 brothers.
Four
I
brothers.
have 4 brothers and no sisters.
For some reason, I thought you were from a place called Meat Cove.
No, I remember Meat Cove. Meat Cove's at the top. A lot of people go in, not a lot of people
Yeah,
come out. Remember
yeah.
that?
I was like, what an
no, Meat Cove
unfortunate
is
name. Yeah.
it's a very, there's a sordid past in Meat Cove and Cape Breton. We don't need to go into that. You can Google it. It's not pleasant. Yeah. No, I'm not from there, but I'm from Sydney River.
But would you say that having 4 brothers, did it inform your comedic sensibility?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
was your-
Also, growing up in Cape Breton.
Okay.
People are really funny there. There's nothing else
Yeah.
to do. So the kitchen party is not uniquely, but certainly originally a Nova Scotia thing. It's a very economically, depressed area. People don't have a lot, but they also don't sweat it, and they make up for it in personality, and you have to have an ability to laugh at things or you're not going to make it there. It's just, it can be a difficult place to live. It's also a stunningly beautiful place to live, and people take care of each other, and your neighbor's house is your house, and it's stuff that you just don't really see in a city like Toronto too often. That certainly informed, and people are just funny, and they're storytellers.
Right.
Like spinning a yarn, Newfoundlanders and Cape Bretoners are the best storytellers in the country. It's our heritage, it's what we do, because you had one channel growing up with TV if you were lucky, and you play cards and you tell stories, and it's certainly informed. And I think having brothers and not sisters gave me there was no other girls around to say, or to feel that pressure of you can't do that, or girls can't do that, or, there was a ton of that there. We were Catholic, for Christ's sakes, but I always just went with it.
Right. So you're saying your first job was at Shy Day. So how did that?
No, my first job, I interned for Jeffrey Roche.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
For like 2 or 3 months.
So talk about trial by fire.
Yeah, it was trial by fire. Let's just say it was trial by fire.
There's a lot of people who have Jeff Roche stories.
Yeah.
I'm almost afraid to even poke that bear. I'm almost afraid not to bring it up because I don't,
Yeah.
I'm
Listen,
kind of
he gave me my
scared.
first break as an intern.
Yeah.
And I had a strong book at that point, and he was just beginning. He was just starting to win stuff for the ROM and his agency. It was Roche McCauley back. It was Andy McCauley, who I went on to have a long, working relationship with for many years. Andy was always really good to me. And Jeff had a lot of young people in. He didn't have money to pay people, and he had a knack for finding really hungry, smart, talented, hardworking young people. And I interned there for a few months, and then that got me a job for a couple of months at BBDO, I think, and then that got me a job at SMW for a couple of months, and then I got to Shy Day.
Okay.
Which was kind of my first. The other two were contract, like trial things. I don't think I did too well.
Right.
And then Peter McHugh, God bless Peter McHugh, man.
That's right.
He took me in at Shy Day and really took me under his wing and saw something, and he was like, just write it over, Peck, and make it funny, and that was and that's where we met, was at Shy It.
Yeah, that's right. I think, I think some people might look at advertising and think, why is it so comedic based? Why is it so often that comedy is the vehicle by which you try to sell things? But, I think the little bit of insight that revolves around that, and what someone had told me, which I took to heart, which is it's almost impossible to create drama over 30 seconds.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's the medium.
And if you can do it, well, then you're like a
well, people are a lot better at it
beast.
now, for sure.
Yeah.
But people want to laugh.
That's right.
There was a reason that back in the late 80s and early 90s, when comedy commercials got really, really good, that everybody was talking about them. And it sells stuff. Like, if you make people feel good and if you make them laugh about your product, you've endeared yourself to them.
Yeah.
So... And you got this much time.
I also think if you miss with comedy, people will forgive you. But if you miss with drama, it's like it's almost like I can't look away.
Yeah, look away. It's a train wreck.
Because it's just like it's just so difficult to do.
And back then we did 60s.
Yeah, that was actually within the realm of possibility.
That was the realm of possibility. I remember
like
you would get like this. And everybody in the creative department wanted it. And if you were the team that got the brief that was a 60-second TV commercial, which then had the possibility of being played in theaters, it was just like it was the mecca of the briefs.
That's right.
And only the seniors got it, or you'd go to work at a place on an account that you knew would do that kind of project. Yeah. Like a big car account or whatever would do 60s back in the day. And then storytelling became more dramatic, I would say.
Yeah. So tell us about this move, because then you were a commercial director for a period of time.
Yeah, so I had been in the business about 10 years, and I absolutely loved production. And I was good at it. Like, my TV commercials looked good, and I really loved picking the soundtracks, which is the copywriter's responsibility, the audio. And it was back when I mean, it's so common now, and it sounds so silly to say, but it was all original scores that were really emotional or exactly out of the, exactly akin to whatever content you were seeing. And it was at the time, and I had started to do this as well, people would pick a song, or people would pick a track, or people would write something that was a complete juxtaposition to what we were seeing and give it this other layer of like and then all of a sudden the music became like another character or became a noticeable part of the idea or something to that effect that was just like, fuck, when you put that song on it, whoa, it changes everything. Yeah. And I loved that. And I loved being on set, and I loved working with actors. I would get so excited at the casting time and would really fight for, well, we got to get a better actor. Like, they're not there yet. Like, I knew the value of that. And I decided after about 10 years of writing that really I should go be a director. What I wanted to do was make commercials. And I loved the editing process. I loved post. I loved everything about it. And so I left. I was at Cassette at the time, and I left Cassette and joined Avion Films because I had produced a lot of commercials with them, and I had a really good relationship with them. And they said, yeah, let's try it. And I was not so good at the directing. I was incredibly mediocre, Steve. You know what it was? Like, I just thought that it would come. I just thought that, I'm a director now. And I didn't realize how hard you had to work. And so out of the spots that I did shoot, hands down, the best thing I loved was talking to the actors. Right. And I'd make sure I had a strong DP. Like, I didn't know what lens we were on. I didn't know where the lights were. I didn't care. And you can't do that as the director. It's not theater, for God's sakes. It's film. So after a couple of years of still freelancing as a copywriter, because I wasn't making any money as a director, I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be an actor. Like, I had this opportunity to direct and write this short film for the Toronto Star. It was kind of a big deal then. BMW did it first. Instead of doing a traditional ad campaign, they hired Ang Lee and Guy Ritchie, and they hired the biggest directors in the time in the world and said, make a short film and just put the car in it. That's all you have to do. And it got huge press, and so that became so Toronto Star was like, we want to hire the 5 up-and-coming young directors. When we say hire, we mean not pay you, to do a short film. All you have to do is put the paper in it. And I wrote and directed this storyline featuring this woman, this young, and people were like, it's you, right? Like, you got to be, I'm like, I'm an actor, come on. Secretly, I was like, yes, I want to do it so bad. And then I did it, and I went, Jana, Jesus Christ, you go be an actor. This is what you're supposed to do. Right. And then I dove in for the next 10 years. Like, I never worked as hard trying to be a director. I studied my ass off. I went to class. I started improvising like 4 or 5 nights a week. I was either in a class, doing a show, watching a show, something. Like, it was my life. And I got an agent, and I started doing well as an actor in commercials right away, ironically enough, because 15 years at that point, sitting on the other side of the table at the casting room, I knew the gig. And I also knew not to take it personally, because sometimes when an actor doesn't get, like, I actually had somebody once, we can't hire her, she looks like my ex-wife. This was the client. So you never know why you don't get it. I'm also 5'10". I'm also a lot taller than the guys next to me sometimes. Sure. Or you just never know. So I never, ever really took it personally, which is a great blessing, because it destroys a lot of actors, the rejection, the constant, and it does weigh on you. I'm not saying it doesn't ever bother me, but I knew enough from being on the other side to not let it eat away at the skill I knew I did have.
I mean, I can remember, working on the audio side for 13 years and working with actors and directing actors. I learned so much about their perspective. Yeah. And I really did, I really feel for actors, because while in our job we can write things, you take it to creative director and he might rip it apart, and there's that little bit of sense of rejection that goes on with writing. But I think it's a lot more easy to deal with than when it's you up there in front of a camera or in front of a microphone where someone goes, you're just not good enough. And I can remember, talking to a casting director about this, because I was working with one actor who always seemed to be really, he would take shots at you at will, right? Even right off the bat. And I remember saying, what's wrong with this person? Like, why are they so aggressive? And he goes, they're just really self-conscious. They're just really afraid of being hurt. So that's the defense mechanism. They can be.
I mean, I don't know that's specific to actors either. I mean, I think that's a lot of humanity.
Yeah, anybody.
But particularly actors doing commercials, you're a monkey jumping through a hoop on fire.
Right.
They don't want your perspective. They like literally do it like this, say it like this, say it like this. Like they like it's not the fucking parrot sessions. It's not
Yeah.
Do you want? And it's not until, and it's stunning to me. So many directors in particular have no idea what an actor does.
Yeah.
They have no idea, and they're not interested.
Oh, and I would encourage anyone to get on the other side of the camera
Yeah.
or the microphone and do that job
Yeah.
because, there's also nothing like sitting there, doing your line or whatever, and then silence on the other side that there's a conversation, but you don't know what they're saying. And then your mind runs wild and it's like, it's all my fault.
Yeah, well, again, I didn't go through that because I've been on those conversations
Sure.
on the other side. It's like, we're 3 seconds long. What are we going to do with these extra 3
that's
seconds?
right.
It has nothing to do with me.
That's right.
And it wasn't until, and now I'm at the point, and I guess I'm established enough. I don't know that I am, but I'm also old enough. I don't give a fuck anymore. But
Right.
I'm going to go in and I'm going to do my thing. Either you want it or you don't. That's fine. If you don't want what I do, no problem. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm genuinely okay with that. Or maybe it's just not right for this project. But I'm going to come in and do what I do because nobody else can do what I do. Just like I can't do what she does. She does what she does.
Do you think that you're quicker at interpreting scripts because of the writing background?
Yeah, for sure.
I used to
I'm
find
stunned in acting class, man. Some actors are not so smart. Like they just see what they want to see.
Yeah, well, I can remember, producing scripts that I would look at, and, it would take a few passes for me to even think, oh, okay, I know what you're going for now. And I honestly would think, for actors who are performing, who are thinking about strictly their performance and not necessarily the intent, especially in advertising, which is to sell a little bit. I could understand how that would be difficult, but I would imagine being a writer and conceptualizing for advertising would make you a little bit quicker
I have
with
to say
that.
this: the dual skills I think have helped me tremendously. Certainly, because I did a lot of commercials as an actor in my career early. Nobody wants me in them anymore, apparently.
Well,
I had a good run, Steve. I had a good run. But absolutely, my knowledge of advertising and my knowledge of writing and understanding why they're cutting or knowing exactly what that conversation behind the glass is going on about and being able to modify and not take it personally has been a huge part of my mental survival, I think, in this crazy, crazy business.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, again, to revisit that you're a female copywriter, actor.
I'm a lady.
You're a lady. How do you feel about the industry? Do you think it's gotten better?
It's definitely gotten better. I mean, when I was in my early 20s, and I was at Chiat, and I'm not going to say who it was, but there was a creative director at the time, and it was open concept. So like you remember the walls only came up about halfway. So you're sitting at your desk and you're looking across and you can see everybody. And the creative department, the offices all went along the window along a hallway. So I was the only woman in the department, which was very, very common. I mean, I could count on maybe 2 hands how many women that I knew were in the business. And we were all younger. And every morning, so it was me and like 7 guys, whatever, in the department. And the guys were pretty good. Like,
Who was your partner?
Oh, I had several. There was at Chiat, it was Steve Driggs from Utah. Sweetheart.
The only Mormon copywriter I knew.
The only Mormon copywriter anybody ever knew.
No, art director. Sorry. Yeah.
He was art director, obviously. So every morning, Stephen, I would be sitting at my desk, and the creative director at the time would walk through the hallway. Brother, walk right by my desk. Brother.
Didn't even get a sister.
No.
Oh, wow. So.
Fuck you.
How is that?
How do you think it is?
Yeah.
It's exactly how you think it is.
Right.
To be told you're clearly not part of this club. Mm-hmm. And that's not so prevalent anymore, and there's so many more women in the business, and certainly on the account services side and the client side. Like, you go to any room now, and it's 8 women and 2 guys in every meeting.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it has gotten better. And having said that, I think it's a great career for women. I would encourage young women to go into marketing and to go into advertising. And especially for the younger women today who are getting into the business, I really do feel that pretty much the sky's the limit. You can make this career whatever you want it to be. Yes, CEOs are still 97% men or whatever stupid stuff it is. And at some point there's going to be a glass ceiling. But who knows, in 20 years when the young ladies today getting in, you know, you can be a president, you can be a global player if that's what you want.
Sure.
You can be a creative. There's loads of women creative directors now.
Yeah.
And the business is such a juggling business that women's organizational skills and ability to keep plates in the air, which I think is stronger than men, in a broad sense. Not
Sure.
not
No, I would agree.
not everybody, but serves them well.
Well, and you'd mentioned earlier, before we got started, you know, when you consider how much of the, still tons of purchase decisions, of course, are
We
led
have all
by-
the power,
That's
everything.
right. And so it's sort of, you know, odd about, you know, these. It always reminded me of like when I worked in New York for a couple of years, is that you have this.
remember that,
Yeah, you have this like a whole concentration of people creating ads for all the rest of the country, and really our experience is so different. I mean, spend a week in the Midwest.
Go to Cape Breton, honey.
That's right, and see that who you're talking to.
You go an hour outside of Toronto,
That's
and you're just like, damn.
Yeah, let's try to not be, too smart by half, and
Yeah.
and of course our industry is so guilty of trying to outdance each other,
Yeah, for sure.
While everybody else there is just, tell me about the product and how it's going to improve my life
Yeah,
somehow.
for sure.
So it's kind of interesting, you've always you got these coastlines, especially in the U.S. Where you're creating everything for everyone in the middle, and their lives couldn't be more different.
No,
lulling yourself into thinking that that's how life works in Iowa.
Yeah,
is
for sure.
Kind of
Or
interesting.
in Red Deer.
Yeah.
Like,
So to have a bunch of guys write about, also, I mean, I know in my career some of the hardest things that I've ever had to write were things that were strictly in the domain of females.
I
Like,
remember these two
put
young
me on
guys.
a cosmetics account. What the hell am I going to do?
I know.
Right?
I worked at Zig. I freelanced at Zig for several years. They were really good to me. Andy was the president, and Elspeth Lynn and Lorraine
There's a
Tao.
powerhouse
There's a
female
powerhouse
duo.
team. Like they single-handedly broke things open for women in Toronto, and I'd even say
Absolutely, yeah.
North America.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely
Like
right.
Kellogg's and everything they did just shattered everything. And suddenly they had all this power, and good for them. They seized it and ran with it. And they were never, I don't even want to say they were never feminists about it, but they were never like, well, we're only getting women in to work with us. Like they're just like, we're running an agency. We happen to be women.
Right.
And I wasn't working on, they had W Network as one of their clients, and I'd worked on W many times. But here were these two young guys. One of them, I guess it's Aaron Starkman,
Okay.
who's now a creative genius at Rethink, and Steven, who's now a big wig in Chicago. Like, these are big guys in the business now.
Yeah.
Well, they were juniors, right?
Right.
And they were sitting at Starbucks across the street from Zig in the Scotiabank Theater, and just sitting there staring at each other, lost as fuck. Like, they were in a wet paper bag they could not get out of. And they're just looking at me, Jana, what, like, we don't know. And I sat there and said, well, women, like, do this or that. And they're just like, oh, yeah. Like, they didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
And it was really eye-opening that, okay, A, you shouldn't be on this account. But I think young women had a much more sense of young men than young men have of young women. So,
Yeah.
I'm rambling at this point. Who knows?
No, I mean, I think as a writer, half of your job is to try to put yourself in the shoes of whoever the target is and try to imagine their lives. And if you can't imagine their lives, then do your best to. I mean, gosh, how many people have you bored during the conceptual phase of trying to dig out some insights?
Yeah,
where,
yeah.
They
had no insight at all. That's what it was. They had no, but to
Yeah.
their credit, they knew that.
Yeah.
And they knew they were in trouble.
Yeah, and sometimes sitting across from your partner and staring at each other for long periods of time and not getting anywhere is better to walk away and to actually
big time.
talk to some people, right?
I swear to
And
God, the first 10 years of my career were just.
I know. I think there's that weird thing with advertising where, in any other business, two people staring at each other, not saying, anything for 15 minutes. And then going, oh, okay, how about something like this? It's an odd thing to kind of
It's
see.
a very, very, very odd thing to do.
It's funny you brought up Sade and the whole open concept thing,
Yeah.
because that office, which was designed by Frank Gehry, I think.
Oh, was it?
I think so. He designed the LA office, and I think he was involved in the design of the Toronto
I
office.
didn't know that at the time.
And it was a different place. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like varnished plywood.
Yeah.
But the whole open concept thing was,
Just getting started then. Like
Yeah.
Y&R, everybody had a door. All the big agencies, everybody had a door.
That's right. And then here it was almost like it was flat. It
Yeah.
was like everything was pretty much.
Well, that was
had the
part
same
of also
thing.
the culture was not just open concept, but flat hierarchy. That
that's
there's
right.
that every the creative director has the same office as the junior.
I tell you, one thing that it wasn't good for was, as you recall, at that point the internet was very new, and I can remember seeing things I could never unsee because it was open concept, and I'd have some person say to me, "Hey, check this out," and it'd be like someone having sex with a donkey, and I'd be like, "Whoa, what the hell?" There was no internet etiquette.
There's no firewalls.
There was no email etiquette.
Oh, I remember.
You'd have ridiculous things
Oh,
being shared,
yeah.
and we hadn't learned yet that there are some things that you should keep to yourself. And now, of course, you got like private browsing because you don't want anyone to know what you're looking at. But back then, it was like, hey, look at this freaky thing. And it'd be like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What a time.
What a time.
Yeah.
Jesus, yeah. Even 20 years has made a big difference.
Yeah, the industry has really, really changed. And not just the business itself. I think people and culture and all those things, it's like,
5 years before me, these producers that we were talking about before we got on air, these women producers, they would have to go have pre-production meetings in strip joints.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, think about that. For the big beer companies and the big car companies, you're sitting at a table at a strip joint. So let's go over the shot list. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
That's when I got my first job, and Jane Pritchard, Jane Pritchard was not a young person at that point.
Yeah, no, she was one of the few women names Shelley Ambrose,
Talk about elbowing your way into a business and saying, "Hey, I'm going to make this happen." And I think everybody did respect that, but I can't imagine the types of things that person would have to endure.
It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
And all they wanted to know is where's the column in the budget for the strippers and for the dinners and for the beers and so if it was a $400,000 commercial, it was a $430,000 budget so that the boys could play.
Well,
it's just fucking crazy.
Well, I mean,
and not all the time. I don't mean to imply that was rampant,
sure.
and I'm not saying names or anything, but I'm telling you it went on.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
I know it did.
Well, even company parties, like I would say Chiat Day was a very liberally minded company.
Oh man, there was some you couldn't get away with that now.
Holy smoke! I mean, I
and it's not a mistake that a third of the company was 22-year-old girls.
Yeah. It was. There's stuff that happened that you would get away with. You wouldn't dream of getting away with now.
Never.
Not that it seemed like it was like an evil thing at the time. It just seems like something that the people would do.
It was just racy. It wasn't evil.
That's what
it was just accepted.
That's right.
And it was advertising. I remember one guy, I'll tell you his name later. He was a young account guy at the time, and he worked on a car account, and he had to take the male clients out to the strip joint. And he had to put it on his credit card because they expected him to pay, and then he couldn't expense it. So he got stuck. And this was like he was, making $22,000 a year, paying for these fuck faces who were making $400,000 a year to go out and cheat on their wives, and it's bananas.
Yeah,
it's bananas.
I think I didn't even realize how crazy it was until I actually started to work in the industry, and even back then, which a lot of people in the 70s and 80s would have said, "Oh, this the 90s is insanely tame." And in comparison, the 90s seemed like an absolute ridiculousness compared to now.
Yeah. But I mean, you look back at Mad Men and you're like, I wasn't there, but I can see that's not too far-fetched. That's not too far-fetched.
I mean, the booze alone. I mean, the lunches where you'd go out, it's like, there's no one was at the lunch table and said, "No, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'll have a fruit juice."
Yeah.
It was like pound out a number of drinks and go back to the office kind of half lit and and then, which I think unfortunately kind of fuels that stereotype about creative people where it's like, "Oh, I know don't you guys hang around and play pool and come up with ideas," and it sort of it gets away from the fact that no, we have to sell them, so we need strategy involved, and we actually think about it a lot, and
I've never worked harder than I did in my young years in advertising.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hours, but part of that is forever to come up with ideas, and now the experience, like this one, no, this one, no, this one, all right, I'll do 10 more, no problem.
Well, they called it Shy Day and Night. And that was a big, if you left at 5, you're like, what's the half day about? And it really helped that many of us didn't have families.
Yeah, for sure. We were all young.
Yeah. And so it was, might as well,
every weekend
work and party and have a great time. And,
Is this what we came here to talk about?
Not really, no. it's
the
like
mayhem and sexiness of advertising in the 90s.
I really want young people to get a good sense of how they can get a job in this business, and we're talking
it's not
about
like that anymore, girls.
Yeah.
And guys.
Right.
And now young men are just so used to having women bosses and women colleagues, and there's nothing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not. It's totally expected.
Yeah.
They didn't have the double standard that we had to put up with.
So that being said, just for anyone who is looking to get a job in advertising, I usually ask people, what's the best advice someone gave you? Who is your mentor? Who do you think about when you think about who shaped your career or helped you get your start?
I would say McHugh.
Yeah.
Peter McHugh did. The thing that I can only talk about getting into the creative end of the business, but there's so many good programs now. Like if you want to get into marketing, go to Humber and come out of it with your book. They hook you up. Like there's a whole network in place now to get young people into the business that didn't exist when I was there. But the thing that helped me was reaching out to people and saying, look, I know I'm not ready to be hired yet, but will you please go through my book with me? Will you please tell me why I'm not getting hired and what I need to do? And also then it makes contacts. Then I would go and change my book, and I'd come back and say, maybe you hire me now. I would say reach out to people and make as many contacts as you can. And, as much as we talk about what a kooky business it is, a lot of people are really open to, they're flattered that you want their opinion, and they remember what it was like when they couldn't get in. And there's a lot of decent people in the business who are happy. If they have the time, they will help you.
Yeah. I think everyone has someone when they're starting to get into the business that will actually literally take hours of their time to sit down, tell you the truth about what you have, and then maybe your job is to actually listen, and if it sounds like it's sound advice, you should go do it.
Oh, you have to go do it. Don't be so, listen. Here's my biggest piece of advice as a creative person. For every ad, whether it's a radio ad, TV, Facebook, whatever, for every one that gets produced, you will have written 30. So you better get the fuck over every word you come in under your mouth being precious, because it's not. And it's literally, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And it's so get over it. Because you think, you gave birth to this thing, and it was so hard to come up with it that clearly it's got to be wonderful. It's not.
Yeah. So
give birth again. And eventually it just becomes a muscle that you use, and also you don't take the rejection personally. And if you've got a good person saying, it's like, okay, it's a great idea, but it's off strategy, and here's why. Here's how you tilt it onto the strategy, which means the ending has to change. Like, it's not by chance that anything ends up in a commercial. It is researched to death. It is focus grouped till the end of the world. And it's got to please the client's mother. I mean, it's ridiculous what an idea has to go through to survive. So you better be adaptable, or you are not in the right business.
Yeah.
You're not in the right business. And the same thing goes for acting. Same thing goes for any creative venture whatsoever. It is a process, and if you're not willing to admit that it's a process and give yourself over to that process, don't go in the business, because it's an exercise in futility.
Yeah, I think anyone who, if you are lucky enough to come up with an idea that you really love in the initial stages and it's bought and produced, it like rub a lamp. It is that rare.
It is that rare.
Most of the time, you're going to go back to the well, and you have to maybe take the point of view that there's still other great ideas out there, and don't get caught up in that one, because most of your career is going to be going back and revising, going back and changing.
And P.S., it almost always makes it better.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true.
So don't be afraid of that.
Yeah.
That would be my advice.
Another thing that I always ask guests is their craziest client story. Although you've told us, you've alluded to some here. I know I had a session where there was a client that I hadn't worked with in a long time, and she, I just wasn't expecting it, and she came in, she kissed me directly on the lips. And it was so shocking to me, because it was one of those ones where she grabbed my face, so there wasn't you couldn't go anywhere with it, and it was also I can't make a stink about it, so I'm just going to go with it. But I can remember being like,
She
wow.
slip you the tongue?
Like, she was a heavy smoker, so that wasn't a great part of it either.
Oh, yuck.
And it wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me, but I thought, wow, that hasn't ever happened to me.
What else is a
before.
woman? Like, where else they grab you and kiss you, Steve? My worst, I can't tell. There was lawyers involved. I said something publicly on the record that I should not have said, and it came back to haunt me big
Wow.
time. Yeah.
Really?
No, there were lawyers involved. It was scary.
We'll edit that part.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. That's the most I'll say. But that was careful what you say.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
I mean, the one thing that I've shared with people in a recording session was I had a client say, I can't hear the E in home. And that was sort of a bad moment. And Chris Hirsch talked about a client who's like, when I take off my glasses, I can't quite read it, which is kind of ridiculous. But,
What about when you wear a blindfold?
Yeah, that's right.
What about then? What if we turn all the lights out? Can you read it then?
I've said to everybody, you could do an entire, you could do multiple episodes on research alone, right? About the difficult, about the verbatims that are taken in research that are then, imposed on you in your scripts when you're trying to write, and it's just, less about interpreting why they said that and more about just writing it down. Well, they want the towels to be blue, so let me make them blue.
Yeah, I'm totally using E and home. I'm absolutely putting that in the script. When I take my glasses off, I can't read. Yeah, because I'm doing a focus group idea right now.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, so I need
endlessly
I need
entertaining.
material. Yeah.
I can, here's one of my more favorite focus group stories is we were doing a focus group, and I forget what it was for. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with the focus group thing, is that they often incentivize. They might give you a little bit of money.
$75. Am I? Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
They might give you a little bit of money, and oftentimes they'll have food depending on how long the session is. Well, and it seems odd that they know that there's people behind the glass, but it's that weird phenomenon with people where they'll forget that
they'll
they're
tell
there.
you anything. Yeah.
And they'll literally forget that there's a room full of people staring at you while you give your answers.
And you're on camera.
The funniest thing I ever saw was everyone filed out of the room, and there were still like 4 sandwiches left on the table. And this one respondent who everyone started to file out, he could tell he was kind of he was fiddling with his bag and all this kind of stuff. And as the last person left the door, he jammed like 3 sandwiches into his mouth before he left. Because I guess that he just was,
He's there for the food, baby. Oh, that's classic.
And here's this guy almost choking on a bagel as he's walking out the door, and I thought, oh my gosh! And of course, we're all standing there, we're watching him like TV, and it was like it was like I Love Lucy and that whole famous chocolate conveyor scene. I was just jamming everything, and he had this ridiculous briefcase. Anyways, that was a lot of fun.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, research is a whole other world.
Yeah, focus groups are. Yeah, I'm working on a thing right now.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
That's gonna be good.
I hope so.
So let's wrap up with I know Madge Peck is probably taking up a bunch of your time. Are there other things that are going on that you're into right now?
Yeah,
or you want to talk about?
Madge Peck we've worked on it for a long time, and we're at the point that we need money. I can't afford to shoot them myself. We need somebody to give us some money.
How do people see it?
On our YouTube channel, Madge Peck. We've got a couple of sketches that we shot. Yael Stav is our director. Yael is an amazing advertising director and television director. She started directing at the same time that I did. And she continued with directing, and I went into acting. And she now directs Baroness von Sketch, and she directs Working Moms, and she's a big damn deal. And she's our director, which is terrific. So the stuff looks killer. And you know what was nice? This is what's great about advertising. So we call Yael, we send her the script. She's like, I'm in. And we shot one day, and we shot 2 sketches in one day, and everybody in advertising, Jana, what do you need? We've been waiting 10 years for you to do your own show. I got the top editor, I got the top colorist, I got the top audio, I got everybody free.
That's awesome.
Everybody.
That's great.
It was incredible. And because I had these long-term relationships with people, and because they also want to work on stuff that they find exciting and fun and different, and we were treated like royalty. My partner James was just like, "What the fuck, man? He's not used to that world, right?" And it was just a really lovely experience. The stuff looks amazing, but we need somebody to give us money. But what we've discovered after Just for Laughs, talking about the age thing, nobody wants a sketch show with middle-aged life in it. We've been told repeatedly by broadcasters, we have a millennial mandate and we have a diversity mandate. You guys are white and middle-aged, so your ship has sailed, people.
Not a lot you can do about that.
Not a lot I can do about that. It's the only face I got. But yeah, the age is proven, even though our stuff is crazy smart.
I'm really surprised at that.
Dude, it's heartbreaking.
There's
It's heartbreaking
a ton of middle-aged people out there that
are not getting serviced, by the way.
Sure.
And this was part of the pitch, was I was just like, they seek entertainment that is completely catered to them. They're not getting it, like. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with it. What I think it is, realistically speaking, is it's a very good calling card for me or for us to go to the next project, which is kind of a drag because that was 2 years of my life and very emotional and a lot of, commitment and a lot of writing. And we're very, very proud of the work. But who knows? Our production company just opened in LA, so they're maybe trying to find something in the American market. We think we do well in the British market. We think it's very, very British. But it's at the point that unless someone picks it up, I don't know what else to do with it. Right. Which is unfortunate. The heartbreak.
Well, who knows? Hopefully.
Yeah, who knows? But at the very least, part of the festival in Montreal was all, like I said, all these meetings and stuff. So there's tons of people now that I can call and say, hey, remember me from Just for Laughs? I got something else to pitch you. And they'd be like, great, come on in. Because I've got credibility now. And they're always looking. They're always looking. So
I know when I reached out for you to be here today, you had said, are you sure you want me on? Because I'm really trying to get out of the business. But my answer to you was that I think, there's a lot of young people who follow this. And, I think the interesting thing is that you could work in the advertising business, but as you go through your career, there's a lot of other doors that open and you can
big
make
time.
lateral
It's very,
and moves.
very applicable to all kinds of other things. And if you're a creative person with a business sense at all, then the skills that you will learn in advertising can take you elsewhere. And it is a young person's game. Yeah. There's definitely ageism. That's where the women thing comes in. The ageism for women in advertising is stunning. It's stunning.
Yeah.
In this day and age, it's really shocking that it's so blatant, but it is. So you better have a plan B because nobody retires at 40.
Yeah.
So it can transition you into the next thing.
Yeah.
And that's good to know because especially in today's world, in today's market, nobody works at the same job for 30 years. I mean, those days are long gone. So you better be able to figure out, I'm doing this now, I can take these skills and move it over there, and then I can take those skills and move it. It's a flow.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, your career is a flow.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, it's like Toronto housing. Do I ever see it becoming more affordable? No. And do I ever see a time where, the advertising agency would be like, here's my creative department, it's a bunch of 50-year-old people?
Yeah.
No.
No.
So,
Toronto housing, that's what our first sketch is about.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh, dude, you haven't seen it?
No.
Oh, honey.
I
Check it out.
You should yell at me and say, why haven't you seen it?
I know.
But,
Steve.
Yeah, come on.
Do your fucking homework before you have a guest on the show.
Yeah, I was on a guest on the show.
Lazy ass.
What's that about?
What's that about?
Yeah.
It's 2 minutes long. It's not like it's going to kill you, you know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah, everyone's attention span is that of a gnat.
Yeah. It's big time.
Listen, thanks so much for sharing your story with us today.
This was fun. Look at us. Who knew back 25 years ago when we were partying and being dicks that we
throwing up on Deanie Petty's.
we weren't going to mention the Deanie Petty thing, but we did.
Hot tub
party. Yep.
But we'll have to save that for another time, and hopefully we'll have you back on.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. This is really fun. Thank you so much.
Thanks again.
This episode has been brought to you by the National Advertising Challenge, the only brief-based competition that sends winning creatives to Cannes, France. Learn more at thenationaladvertisingchallenge.com.